Welcome to episode 17 of the Art of Life podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in, making a commitment. I truly believe when you make commitments and you make them vocal, it makes it much harder to back out. So I've committed to at least 52 episodes. That is what I want to release for the Art of Life podcast. Hopefully it blows up. Hopefully it's something I continue to love to do. But even if it's not, I'm going to do this for 52 episodes. My goal is within a year. I started the podcast in November of 2023. I want to go till November 2024 and see where things go from there. But you have to give things a chance. And in my life, for example, stick and knife fighting, where I went to the Philippines and represented Canada for our niece in the Filipino Martial Arts Festival, was the martial art that was the hardest for me. I was prepared to give up. I was certain I was going to give up. Not sure if I've talked about it in the podcast. If I have, I appreciate you guys for listening to the story again, or maybe you're just tuning into this episode. But it was the only martial art where I was like, hey man, I've been doing this my whole life. This just isn't for me. This doesn't work. And then I had committed to a year because I paid for a year. So I'm going to show up for the year and I'm just not renewing. And it was literally one class. It was one class where something clicked and all of a sudden I was moving super good and everyone around me noticed. And I was like, oh, if I had not committed myself to do a year, if I was paying class by class, I wouldn't still be here. I wouldn't be able to go to the Philippines. I wouldn't have had all these amazing experiences. It was that commitment. So I'm committing to 52 episodes, which brings me into November. Let's talk about getting over the need of being liked. And this is an interesting subject because usually I talk about things that I'm pretty certain about, but I'm talking about something that I'm working on myself. I think if you look at what doesn't work in your life and what does work, you can figure out why. And if you want to change the things that don't work, your way of being around them has to change. One of my ways of being is it's always been so important for me that the people around me like me. And coming up in business and as an entrepreneur and all these things, as a fighter, anyone doing anything of in the public eye, the advice is hey, you're gonna have people that don't like you. You're gonna have haters. And I was always maybe self-righteous or tenacious to think that no, I'm a good person. I'm not gonna have anyone that's gonna hate me because I'm always doing the best for people. I'm always having intense empathy and I'm always careful of how other people feel. And of course, I'm old enough now to recognize you can have the best of expectations and intentions and still hurt people. And we're not always at our best. I've done things that we're not necessarily proud of. I behaved based on my own experience, trauma, beliefs, values, and people are going to end up getting hurt. Now more than ever, as I'm more in the public eye, as I'm releasing podcasts every week, as I'm doing more stuff on Instagram, I'm doing bigger projects, I'm realizing that no matter what you do, you're going to upset some people. And so I had to look into myself and be why is it so important that I don't have enemies? Why is it so important that I'm liked? Is it a validation? And something I've found is we talked about this in the 4 archetypes episode, what really drives me is understanding. It's very important for me to understand the world. And that's that curiosity that really pushes me. And when you understand where someone is coming from, it's very hard to be angry at them, right? But just because I can understand where you're coming from doesn't mean what you're doing is right. And when it comes to one of the reasons I did martial arts, I talk about it all the time because it's such a big part of my life, was the feeling of being unsafe. The feeling of I can take care of myself and the people I love physically. And that is also true for your psyche, mindset, and heart. It is important for you to stand up for yourself, even if it means not being liked. And that doesn't mean not having empathy. That doesn't mean not understanding where the person is coming from. It means setting boundaries, right? And I was hesitating what topic I wanted to talk about today. And every day I read 2 books. I don't read 2 full books. I read 2 pages from 2 separate books that are daily inspiration or daily wisdom books because they give me things to ponder. And today's quote, which we'll end the episode with, was very much about that. And I was all right, this is reassurance. This is what I need to be talking about. But when I've read any books, when I've gotten advice from any mentors, I think about all the mentors I've had in my life, and all of them had people that really didn't like them, and they all had people they really didn't like. And I used to say, the next generation has to be better than the old heads. We don't have to make enemies the same way they did. And I'm realizing that that's just human nature. You're going to get people that don't like you, and it's important. When you're trying to avoid that, you're giving up a part of yourself. So for me, a vicious cycle in my life was being upset about something, but it not being worth the conflict. So I don't talk about it, which I think is a lot of us. But when someone's in your life consistently, for example, a romantic partner, you become resentful instead of addressing the thing, because that uncomfortable conversation you want to have is difficult, and you're just like, it's not worth the effort because you don't recognize the bigger cost, right? And I'm dealing with this now because, again, I talked about it last episode. The pain of transformation is now less great than the pain of staying the same, because my deep need of like empathizing and being kind and being liked is now costing me more, and it's more painful than me wanting to change, right? The thing you need to realize if you're in the same boat as me is like the worst people in history also had people that loved them. And the best people in history, the best people you know, they have people that hate them. And you just can't be for everyone. You have to be an advocate for yourself, your own heart, and your own mind. And while I was pondering this today, I vividly remember, I don't know if you guys are the same age as me or what, but there was a TV show called The Weekenders. And there's just, like, it's not particularly like I remember the show well. There's just one episode that really stood out to me. The main character, I think his name was Tino. And it's like these kids in school. And this new kid moves into their school and he starts hanging out with their friend group. And Tino likes this kid, but this kid doesn't like him, but he gets along with all his friends. And so he's feeling so alienated and he's feeling hurt. And he's like, why don't you like me? And near the end of the episode, he approaches the kid and he's like, hey, what did I do to you? And he's like, you didn't do anything. I just don't like you. You know, some people in life aren't going to like you. And I don't like how you move. I don't like how you talk. You drive me crazy. You make me annoying. Who knows why someone doesn't like you? You might remind them of someone you don't like, or remind them of a part of them they don't like. But at the end of the episode, he's just like, he doesn't like me, and that's okay because I like myself. And the people I love me. And that was such a powerful episode. And when I talk about, 2 episodes ago, how important art is for shaping the world. So I'm wearing a Dragon Ball Z hat, actually. I'm recording this on a Friday night. Akira Toriyama just died, who wrote Dragon Ball Z, who arguably, without that show, I don't know if I would have ever gone down the path I went down. My love of martial arts was sparked from TV and movies, and that's what made me explore, right? But the cost of this has been so detrimental in my life, and now, if you were like, a good exercise is to write down on a piece of paper what your problems in your life are, and then figure out, okay, how do I solve these problems? Usually it's a way I'm being or an action that I'm neglecting. Am I okay with these circumstances a year from now? And if not, then it's time to okay, then I got to change something. And that's really what it came down to. As far as trying to do what I'm trying to do in the world, the life is about equivalent exchange, right? And I have talked about this before. If the price I have to pay to impact the lives I want to impact and do what I want to do is have some people not like me, I'm going to pay it. I'm going to, and I'm not going to be a pushover. I'm not going to be someone who tries to please everyone anymore, because every time you do that, every time you do something you don't want to do that you think is wrong, or that you let something slide that you think you shouldn't, when you decide to please someone else and not step on that boundary, or this doesn't work for you, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? If you look at yourself as another person, someone that you love dearly, right? Let's say you love yourself and you have a twin that's exactly you, or you could cross dimensions and talk to yourself, and you could tell yourself the situation you're in. What advice would you give you? Because most often than not, we would tell ourselves to behave in ways differently than we are. Why is that? Because most of us don't value ourselves as much as we value other people. I think about my nephew. I love him so much. Or my family. I love them so much. And if I saw them doing some of the things I was doing or dealing with some of the things I was dealing with, I would not let that slide. So why the fuck am I letting it slide for myself? Because I love myself. I have to be an advocate for my damn self. I have to... Yeah. So that's where I'm at. And I appreciate you guys listening to me. And let's get into the quote. It's a short episode. But I think the message is so valuable. I think if you choose to stop being liked and you just embrace authenticity, right? You get rid of the need of looking good and for approval. You are really setting yourself free. You're setting yourself free from others' expectations, because the reality is, no matter what, there's so many kid stories about this. No matter what you do, you're going to upset some people, right? And no matter what you do, you're going to get rejected. And I talk about this in the past. I talk about this all the time, reframe self-serving beliefs. Reframe your beliefs. When I'm being rejected, I'm not being rejected. I'm being redirected. And the reality is, when you're firmer with your values, you're firmer with your boundaries, you're going to find your tribe so much faster. And that's my goal. I hope you guys are all my tribe. You guys are listening to me talk for this long. You're definitely someone I can, rock and roll with, and I appreciate you guys. And so with that, let's get into our quote. And this might be a little bit of a longer ending of the episode because I want to talk about the quote. So this is from the Daily Stoic. This is a book I read every day. I read a passage. There's dated passages. And they're based on multiple philosophers like Seneca, Epicurus, Marcus Aurelius, of course, with Stoicism. So today is March 8th. If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. Yet you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along so that they may abuse you, leaving it disturbed and troubled. Have you no shame in that? That's the quote. It's Epicurus. Man, I hope I'm saying that right. And then the author of this book kind of writes their thoughts on the quote, and I'm going to leave you with my thoughts on the quote. So what he says, the author, which is Ryan Holiday. Instinctively, we protect our physical selves. We don't let people touch us, push us, control where we go. But when it comes to the mind, we're less disciplined. We hand it over willingly to social media, to television, to what other people are doing, thinking, or saying. We sit down to work, and the next thing you know, we're browsing the internet. We sit down with our families, but within minutes, we have our phones out. We sit down peacefully in the park, but instead of looking inward, we're judging people as they pass by. We don't even know that we're doing this. We don't realize how much waste is in it, how inefficient and distracting it makes us. And what's worse, no one is making this happen. It's completely self-inflicted. To the Stoics, this is an abomination. They know that the world can control our bodies. We can be thrown in jail or be tossed about in the weather. But the mind? That's ours. We must protect it. Maintain control over your mind and perceptions. It's your most prized possession. That's so funny because as I'm rereading that, connecting it to today's episode, it's a little bit of a stretch. But I think so much of our lives and how short life is caught up with being liked, being approved of, being chosen, not ruffling any feathers. And then there's the other side of the stick. Some people will just be shit disturbers for entertainment. You have to find the happy medium that works for you. And you have to know that you're loved no matter what. And if you set a boundary, you cut someone off, it's not because you love them. I'm in a time in my life right now where I'm setting really firm boundaries because I have a vision and I'm working and I'm pushing towards it. And that's my priority. Anyways, with this particularly short episode, I appreciate you all and I will see you guys next week.